By the end of the 19th century, business, first of all, was extremely competitive all during the late 19th century. This is as a broad generalization. And prices were falling throughout. In other words, from the Civil War down to about 1900, late 1890s, prices were generally falling. And they were falling for good reason, namely that business was so competitive and the economy was so productive that the supply of goods and services was increasing at a rapid rate. In other words, that's when America industrialized. It was the biggest period of economic growth in the history of the world. And standard of living went up, and productivity went up, and prices fell. This did not mean that businesses were suffering, because costs were also falling as the productivity increased and mass production increased. So in this situation, the many business groups who tended to be inefficient try to correct this price falling situation by organizing cartels. In other words, by organizing a cartel of each industry so that they could cut production and raise prices. And this was tried in industry after industry, starting with the railroads, which were the first big business in the United States, first large-scale business, and continuing on through manufacturing by the late 1890s. Either trying through cartels, formal cartels, or through mergers. And in the late 1890s, the theory was, we'll just merge into we'll have one big firm for the entire steel industry, the oil industry, etc., and then we'll be able to cut production and raise prices and raise profits at the same time. So they tried this systematically. This was the ideology, so to speak, among businessmen, that the way to benefit for all of us is to have quotas, either formal quotas as in cartels or in mergers where you just agree that you'll have certain shares of this corporation, and then we'll cut production and raise prices. That was the great goal. All of this was a total flopperoo, and case after case, literally hundreds of cases of this kind of merger or cartel, they all flopped. And they flopped for two basic reasons. One is that an economic theory can predict this, and this is confirmed time and time again. Two basic reasons. One is, the basic reason is that the industry is free. Government did not step in and force people to accept the cartel or accept the merger. So what happens is that as soon as the cartel is formed or the merger is completed, and then they cut production and raise prices and profits go up, other businessmen come in and say, "Hey, this looks like a great industry here. The zinc industry or the oil industry or whatever, railroads. They're making a lot of profits. Let's nip in there and outcompete them because they're raising prices, and we're going to now come in with a new firm, a new factory, a new railroad, and we'll bust them." And that's exactly what happened. So you had new competition always coming in and outcompeting the older firms, and then the older firms are stuck with a new firm. Then you have a permanent competitor, which is a big pain in the neck, because they come in with later equipment, with new factories and new equipment, the latest technology, etc. And now they have a permanent new competitor on their hands. So the whole thing became a big pain in the neck for them. And that's one reason. And then internally, what happened was that individual firms would start breaking the cartel and say, "Look, we've raised." In other words, the cartel restricts production, raises prices. Prices are very high, and then the individual firm says, "Look, I'm not supposed to do this because I have a cartel agreement with the rest of my buddies in the industry. But here's what we're going to do. For you, my old pal and drinking buddy or whatever, my buyer, I will sell you the steel or the whatever, titanium, etc., for 20% off list, provided you don't tell anybody about it." Okay, so what you have is a secret price cutting, and then this firm gains profits, gains sales, and of course the secret leaks out pretty quickly after about 6 months or a year, and then the other firms get very mad about this, and they call you your rate buster, which is in business terms is equivalent to scab in union terms, and the whole cartel falls apart with mutual recrimination and hatred, and they're back where they started, except now they've got more hatred than they had before. So in other words, this system didn't work. The cartel policy, the merger policy, flopped. And at that point, some of each step of the way, some of the more far-sighted in the sense of realizing this was a flop among the business groups, decided the only way to preserve a cartel or preserve a merger is to have the government enforce it. The turn of the political arm to create the cartel for you. And this was the origin of progressive regulation. The progressive system was not a group of far-sighted essentially, it was not a group of far-sighted intellectuals who sat around and said, we have to curb businessmen for the sake of the public interest. There's a groups of businessmen saying we have to impose cartels through the government, and thereby eliminating our competition, curbing the maverick firm which doesn't want to engage in a cartel, and gaining profits that way.